Let me just preface it with this. Very often, there are sedras which are joined together. This usually, VAYAK'HEL and Pekudei are joined together. This year not, so we're doing just VAYAK'HEL on its own. And but the last two sedras, which are separate, and VAYAK'HEL, which is separate, and the next week's sedra, which finishes the book, are about fundamentally the following things: that it's the day after Yom Kippur. We're going to see that Moshe called everyone together, and we got the mitzvah to build the Mishkan. Now you have to know this is all very deep code, and the building of the Mishkan, let me just give you this in perspective. The number of psukim, the number of verses in Bereshis for Hashem to create the world is, I can't remember, it's either 32 or 35. You can look it up, but I'm telling you that's close. I think it's 35. The number of psukim for building the temple, the Mishkan, is about 350, 400. There's a vort by somebody not Chabad that for God to build a world, he can do that in 35 psukim. For us to build a Mishkan, we need much more. Those much more, however, are in a very strange way. The last two sedras before this one goes through Tetzaveh and Truma. Truma and Tetzaveh go through describing, one, how to build the building, and two, what the Kohanim should wear. This week and next week, the whole detailed explanation is repeated almost word for word. And the question, and it's a question why? Because libraries have been written out of one word in Torah. Every word is so laden with and pregnant with meaning, and even a letter can make enormous differences. We're going to see tonight, we're going to be learning one word which carries with it enormous secrets of how to live. We'll see that in a minute. But so the amazing thing is that this business of the description is so intricate and then repeated almost word for word that one has to understand that there must be something important going on in relation to that. Okay, we'll put that on a shelf for a moment, and let me start this journey. I'm going to have to read a little bit of Hebrew because it's got to be in context. So the Sedra begins like this. VAYAK'HEL Moshe es kol hadas b'nei Yisrael. That Moshe, I'll translate, that Moshe gathered together all of Am Yisrael. Vayomer aleichem, and he said to them, Elu hadvarim, these are the things asher tzivah Adonai, that Hashem commanded, la soy som, for you to do. Now listen to this. Sheshish yomim teose malocha. 6 days you will do your work, or your work will be done. Ubayom hashavi, and on the seventh day yihi lachem kodesh, will be kodesh for you, holy for you. Shabbos Shabboson, the Shabbos of Shabbases. That's repeated to indicate its power, Ladonoi, to Hashem. So I just want to start getting the bones of this sikha together. There are 4 separate moments of tension in these psukim, these 2 psukim. The first is that most of the time when Moshe is told by Hashem to speak to the people, it says that Hashem says to Moshe, Daber B'nai Yisrael, speak to the Jews. But why does this require Moshe? The first word VAYAK'HEL Moshe is Koladas B'nai Yisrael. VAYAK'HEL means to gather together. Why does he have to gather them together? And the commentaries explain that it's not when he's talking about Kol B'nai Yisrael, he's talking about men, women, children, everybody. So there must be something incredibly significant to require him to gather together, for that word to be used, first of all, and what's to be done by that gathering together. Now, the second thing that we're told is that the mitzvah that is coming up is Shabbos, right? And there are some peculiarities about this, and you won't see it on the first reading or a second reading or third reading. You need explanation for it. So I'm going to tell you the explanation, specifically various Rebbeim have been through, but Chabad makes a very big deal of this, and that is this, that the mitzvah of Shabbos is out of place. We're learning that Moshe Rabbeinu gathered together the whole of Klal Yisrael to do what? To hear the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos. We knew about Shabbos. We knew about Shabbos at Yitzias Mitzrayim. We knew about, because of the Mon, that they learned about Shabbos with the Mon. They learned that they could get them Mon 6 days a week, but Shabbos they couldn't. We knew all about it, and we had the laws that were attendant to that. And then Matan Torah, when we got the 10 Commandments, one of the 10 Commandments is to keep Shabbos. So what is so important about this gathering everybody together, men, women, and children, to tell them about Shabbos, which we already knew about? That's the second question. Third thing is that you have to take this in context. You've got to know when this was. This is the day after Yom Kippur. In the timeline, Moshe Rabbeinu goes, we get the 10 Commandments. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up on Har Sinai, spends 40 days and 40 nights, comes down. There's the sin of the golden calf. He goes back up again, begs for forgiveness, etc. Finally, we have Yom Kippur. We're forgiven. The first mitzvah that we have after Yom Kippur is to build the Mishkan, is to build the sanctuary. The sanctuary is a tent, not very big, you should know. You'd be surprised. It's about, it's 30 amas, that's about 45 feet long by about 15, 16 feet wide. It's not a big place. You've got 3 million Jews. And they've all got to somehow function in terms of the sanctuary. So, and we have 4 sedras which describe how to make it, what goes in it, what the kalim are, what the kohanim have to wear. And the sedra doesn't start with that. The sedra starts with gather people together and Sheshes Yomim Te'aseh Malach. In 6 days your work will be done. And if you understand that this is after Yom Kippur, all of a sudden, all the commentators agree that the reason it's here is to tell you what is the work you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Because, let me ask you the question. I mean, we've all been learning together a long time, and I'm sure we've covered this territory, but whatever we haven't covered should be covered, and whatever we've covered, if you learn it again, so what? But you have to define work. What does it mean to keep Shabbos? It means on Shabbos you're not allowed to work. What does it mean, work? Does it mean lighting a match is work? Carrying a sack of potatoes, especially as you get older, gets heavier and heavier. Is that work? It's not work. You can carry potatoes around your house all day Shabbos for the whole 25 hours, 24 and a half hours, whatever it is, including Beinas Shmoshos, and you haven't done any work. So what is work? So we learn that work are the activities necessary to build the Mishkan. And that's why these things go together. The issue of Shabbos, which we'll come back to in a moment, the issue of building the Mishkan, which we had the last two Sedras and these two Sedras, and the fact that and the reason that they're in the immediate proximity is that the building of the Mishkan all the activities in building the Mishkan are what's prohibited on Shabbos. And, in Halakha, you should know this takes up an enormous amount of learning, because these 39 malakas, they're general. It's like, for example, you can't die, D-Y. You can't grow herbs, which were needed for the spices. You can't kill an animal. Why? Because you need the skins. They had skins in the temple, so in order to have the skins, you've got to kill the animal. If you're going to have to kill the animal, that's building the Mishkan, because the skins are necessary. So of those 39 malachas, as they're called, 39 of malacha means general categories. There are hundreds and hundreds of branches to what, for example, you're not allowed to shear on Shabbos, right? That's one of the activities. They used to shear the sheep for the things, the kalim in the sanctuary. So what's one? So that's an av malacha. That's one of the head malachas. So what? There are a whole lot of branches of that. For example, brushing your hair. You take a good brush to your hair, what's left of it for some of us, and you brush it on. If you brush it on Shabbos, and some of the hair inevitably comes out onto the brush, you have an aveira of. You've committed the aveira of shearing. That's exactly what that is. There's a very big question on, for example, you're not allowed to separate bad from good. So you're allowed to separate good from bad, but not bad from good. So there's a whole question on, for example, whether you're allowed to use, this isn't a halakha shir, but I'm just giving you some examples. Can you use floss for your teeth on Shabbos? These are questions which derive from the fact that there are 39 av malakas, and they comprise what we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Right? How do we know that? Because this pasuk is in such close proximity with the mitzvah of building the Mishkan. Then it says that in that pasuk that I read to you, it says that that the day it'll be Hilachem Kodesh, it'll be holy, Shabbos Shabboson. The word is repeated. When the word's repeated in Hebrew grammar, I'm no grammarian, but it means specially so. It's underlining it. It's making it more obvious and more particular. So they are the four things that the Rebbe addresses in this sikha, but we're going to deal, you'll see, with one or two aspects of it much more. The four aspects, just a summary, that Moshe gathered everybody together rather than just speaking to them, that the first mitzvah that we get in this week's Seder is about Shabbos, but we don't need to be given this now because we already had it. So why is it here? The third thing is, what is this Shabbos Shabboson? What's so fantastic about Shabbos Shabboson? And why is this in immediate proximity to the day after Yom Kippur? So everyone's got the questions. So we start the journey with this, that the Rebbe says, this looks like Moshe is telling them about Shabbos. That's what it looks like. But that's not what it is. And what it is a deep, deep matter of significance for every Jew. For everybody, but especially for Jews. And that's this, that it says that the mitzvah of Shabbos begins with the word, so I remind you, Moshe gathered the whole of the Bnei Israel together, and he said to them, these are the things which Hashem is commanding you to do. Now, Sheshis Yomim Teosei Malacha, 6 days your work will be done. Ubayoim Hashavi, and on the 7th day it should be for you a Shabbos Shabbosim. So, sorry?
That's right.
So, the Rebbe is saying this. He's saying this isn't an instruction for Shabbos. This is an instruction of how you live the 6 days. First, understand this. The Pasuk says 6 days, Sheshis Yomim, 6 days, Teosei Malacha, your work will be done. And then we talk about Shabbos Shabbosim. So the first thing that we have to understand, buddies, is that we're supposed to work for 6 days of the week. 6 days of the week, you've got to work and contribute. We were talking about this before this year, what certain people don't contribute to things in Israel, etc., what we were talking about. We have an obligation to work and to earn money, to give tzedakah, to provide for our wives and children and families, to be a part of a community, to help build that community. We have to be busy with ordinary physical activity which is productive. And all of the processes how do you define productive, normal physical activity, building and creating? The malachas of the Mishkan. Everything that they had to do in the Mishkan to build the Mishkan satisfactorily, that's what, with all its offshoots, that's what we've got to do 6 days a week. And now the Rebbe zeroes in on one word. I'm going to get you, I need a Hebrew guy, an Israeli. If I asked you, Ronin, to say to me, 6 days you've got to work. So, huh? Okay, or let's use the word taseh, right? Because it's the same word. But taseh means work, right? That's not what the word is. No, the word is teoseh.
Taseh is do, it's not work.
It's to be done. Be done. What does it mean to be done? It means that it's done passively. It's not, teoseh is the passive version of taseh, the word that Ronen used. Ronen used the word doing. Teoseh means being done. Now the Rebbe asks you to try to change perspective on everything about your life with this one word. Because let me take you to where this is going. The Rebbe is going to be saying that we get brachas from Hashem, but we have to actualize them through physical endeavor. But if you think that it's your physical endeavor that's getting the result, you don't get Judaism. and you don't get your relationship with your God. Because when you work for a result, the bracha comes from Hashem. The pipeline you make. But the bracha, you don't make the bracha. The bracha comes from Hashem. So when it says teose, it means that the work will be done in a passive manner. You put your shoulder to the wheel, trust in God, and there will be a result. You're not creating the result. You're facilitating Hashem giving you the bracha. Now, this is an amazingly different perspective. It sounds like a tiny detail, but in fact, it's a chasm. Because I'll tell you, I've said this many times in this year, I've been a solicitor in Double Bay, 56, 7 years. 1969. So 56 years. And in that time, Double Bay's rich, I'm Jewish, so, and it's always been a successful practice, Baruch Hashem. So I had a lot of rich Jews over the years. And they and you have to understand these are Holocaust survivors, children of Holocaust survivors who came out of Europe starving, shoveled out of the gas ovens, and they honestly believed that their salvation was money. And they went to work, and they were clever, and Jews are clever, and they did very well. Some of them did very, very well. And it didn't work for them. Would they rather have been rich than poor? Of course they would. But did it answer all of life's problems? Certainly not. And what was the biggest stumbling block that they had? If I go back now in my mind and try and analyze it, learning the Rebbe's Torah, the biggest problem is that they thought that they made the money. They made the money. They made their own luck. I can't tell you how many Jews have sat across the desk from me and said, I make my own luck, And that's simply not true. That's not true. Do some people make more money than other people? Yes. Do some people have one sort of test, and one person has a test of wealth, one person has a test of poverty, But brachas come from Hashem. They don't come from us. Mm-hmm. So the word now takes on a whole different meaning. So I'm going to read the words again. That Moshe gathered together all of Bnei Yisrael, and he said to them, these are the things that Hashem is commanding you to do. 6 yomim, 6 days, teose malochet, your work will be done. Ubayom hashavi, and on the 7th day, you've got to rest. And that rest has got to be a relief from work, and that work means not doing the things that we do in the temple. So the Rebbe asks this question: what does it mean that the work will be done? What does it mean that you've got to refrain from? What are we talking about here? Let's say you get it. Let's say you say, okay, I get it. God gives the bracha, and all I'm doing is providing the keli, the vessel. I'm providing the cup, and Hashem is pouring in the wine. So the question then becomes, what is it that you've got to do? What is your role? What is your role in this? Do you have to go to work? Of course you have to go to work. You stay in bed, you're not going to make... That's not part of the deal. You've got to go to work. So what is it about your work that is teose, that the work will be done? So the Rebbe explains it like this, and these are the words he uses. And we're going to have to flesh out some filling from this. But the words that the Rebbe uses is this, that when you work, there's a phrase that when Otomarishan sins, Hashem says to him that you will work with the kapecha, with your hands, that the work should be done with your hands. And the Rebbe is explaining that you have to work with your hands and your strength, but not with your head and not with your heart. Now, does that make, let's understand that. What the Rebbe is trying to say is that you as a Jew and I as a Jew have two levels of focus. We keep learning this over and over again in one seeker after another, one aspect after another. We live a physical life, but we have to have a spiritual perspective with that life. Otherwise, the life's useless, it's meaningless. Waste of time, waste of space. What, you live 70, 80 years for an omelette? You live 70, 80 years for a car that's rusting in the garage. You live the 70, 80, 120 years, whatever it is, in order to make it, help to be part of the army to make a dira b'taktoinim, a dwelling place for Hashem in the physical world, and build a relationship with your God. To do that, you have to have a perspective. What is this perspective? This perspective is that your head and your heart are reserved for your spiritual time, and your hands and your feet and your legs and your muscles are reserved for your physical time. So does it mean that if I'm a lawyer, I'm not allowed to try and be clever and solve problems creatively? That's for shalom. That's part of my job. That's part of my work. But where is my head and my heart? My head and my heart is, let me give you an example. I learn with Rabbi Leader every day, right? He's my morning havrusa. He loves to do a letter from the Egress before we start, which I also love. So we had a letter. This woman writes into the Rebbe that, and you have to know this is in the 50s. She writes in, and she's a from woman. So she writes into the Rebbe and says, you know, Rebbe, we're short of money. And so I've decided to become a typist. And I'd like the Rebbe's brocha for me to leave the house and go to work and become a typist. So the Rebbe replies this, listen to this, the Rebbe replies that you need the money, good. You want to earn the money by typing, good. But you're not a typist. Don't become a typist. You're a from woman who's a mother and a Jew with a purpose in life, and you need to earn money. Typing, good. But a typist? You want to be a typist? You understand this? You know, if somebody says, I'm a lawyer, that's a very sad thing. He's a lawyer. What does that mean? He's not a lawyer. He's a from Jew, hopefully from Jew, or accumulating frumkeit in being a Jew, whose parnasa comes to him through the channel of being of law.
That's the question. Who are you? And most people to say they're their job, and that's not who they are.
Well,
And
that's
exactly
right.
the
That's
same
exactly
thing.
what we're
Because
talking
I
about.
understand the creation. That's why I brought it up.
That's exactly what we're
Most of the
talking
people
about.
classified you as what you do.
Sorry?
Most of the people classified you as what you do.
And I'm trying to explain to you how deep this
That's not
mistake
who you
is.
Yes.
That's exactly what we're learning here. That how deep that mistake is. Because the mistake goes much further. You're going to see in a minute that the mistake goes much further than that, because it really goes to the basis of your betochen. You know, we have Tony Mitchell was here the other week. He's not here this week because he had to go somewhere in the country. But he was. I was telling him a couple of weeks. We're in shul, and he sometimes joins us to learn with us. I'm sure he won't mind me telling you this. And one day he was in a hurry to go, and he skipped the shir, and when he came to the shir on Tuesday night, he explained to me why, that he had to be at some meeting, blah, blah, blah. And I reminded him that there's a story with the Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, where one of the Hasidim came running out of 770 after davening, and the Rebbe called him over and he said, Rebbe, I can't, I have to run, got to run. So the Rebbe called him over, so now he has to go, right? So he goes over and the Rebbe says, he only has one question for him. He says, how do you know your parnasa isn't in the opposite direction? You understand this? This is the perspective we're talking about. Does it mean you can ignore all the practical signs and not go to work and not try your hardest and not think creatively and not put in a full day's work? Of course it doesn't. But you have to understand as a matter of perspective that isn't who you are. And it's not who you are for your wife. And it's not who you are for your children. And these people who really sincerely believe at some level or another that by working 20 hours a day and then talking on their mobile phone when they get home and going to work before the children are awake and coming home after the children are asleep and not speaking to their wives for any time because they're so busy. If you stop them and ask them, why are you so busy? Why are you doing this? You've already got XYZ dollars. And he says, I'm doing it for my family. And he believes that. And it's true at one level, right? But the reality is that it's not working because the family is the one who's paying the price for that. So there are two things going on here. One is, what is enough? So how much of your time are you prepared to sacrifice for making money? And secondly, once you're doing that and trying hard, etc., where is your focus? Is your focus on the fact that it's you making money to drive a car, to eat, to drink, to sleep, to have sexual relations, all good things, all physical things that we all want and need, and etc. But at the end of the day, what's your perspective? Your perspective, if your perspective as an aging Jew is the same thing as a brandy teenager, you've got a serious problem to consider. What are you living for? If the pleasures that you're seeking now, at a man is 40, 50, 60, 70, and there should be a growth. There has to be a growth. And where is the growth? The growth isn't just in accumulating more toys. The growth is in a perspective of building a relationship with your God. And then the work needs to be done. It's not work that you do. It's a kind of adjunct to your existence. It's not your existence. You have to be, you need more money, you've got to go and type for money. But to be a typist, what does that mean? So l'chaim, this gets harder. Why is this the day after Yom Kippur that Moshe Rabbeinu is? First of all, let's agree that what he's teaching us is not about Shabbos yet. He's teaching us about the 6 days of the week. And what our attitude needs to be on the 6 days of the week, it's not tase, it's teose, that the work be done. It needs to be, you need to be removed from that in terms of focus and dedication. Doesn't mean you have to be dedicated. I'm sure I'm getting this. I'm sure you're getting this. I'm not saying that you shouldn't concentrate at work. Of course you have to concentrate at work. In fact, it says, for example, the Talmud says that if a person is working for a boss and he's taking time for himself, he's stealing. It's a form of theft. He's employed to work. But work with what? That's the question. And what level of focus is that work? So now let's talk about this. Yom Kippur was the day of forgiveness for the sin of what? For the sin of the golden calf. What was the sin of the golden calf? The sin of the golden calf was avodah zarah, idol worship. They got it wrong. They got Moshe's dates wrong. Moshe said he was going to come back on the 30th of June, and they thought 30th of June finished at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they got the date wrong, and it was one day later. And Moshe Rabbeinu came down a day later, and he wasn't late. They thought he was late. They thought he died, and in order to substitute, they made a golden calf for a whole lot of reasons I've explained in Shurim lately, and they prayed and brought offerings to that golden calf. And that is one of the most primary, basic, terrible sins that a Jew can do. Why? Because our connection is to our God, to one God, Einoid Milvadoi. There's nothing else but godliness. That doesn't mean there aren't more than one God. It means that there's nothing but God. So for a Jew, his focus is to his God at communal level, but also at a one-to-one level. What the sin of the golden calf was this. Let me give you an example. Okay, we have a mitzvah in one of the 10 Commandments to honor your father and mother, right? Not to love them, by the way. Not to put up with being exploited, but you have an obligation to honor your father and mother. Why? So the Talmud says, because they gave you birth. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be alive. And for what's called Hakaras HaToev, which means being grateful, you have to honor them. You have to give them honor in gratitude. So now, what's avodah zarah? We have the sun, and blind Freddie knows that the warmth and light from the sun grows plants. So plants are given life by the sun. So what's wrong if you have to give kavod to your parents for bringing you into the world? What's wrong with giving kavod to the sun for growing the plants? You understand the question? It sounds like it's the same thing. What's the difference? The difference is that your parents had a choice whether to participate. Your parents don't give you life. Hashem gives you life. They have a choice in the process of whether or not you're going to be given life. The sun has no choice in relation to the plants. The plant has no choice in relation to the sun. And because of that, we treat the sun as an axe in the hand of the wood chopper. That's the standard phrase that's used in Torah literature, that the sun is merely an agent of Hashem to bring the sunlight in. So if you want to worship the reality that light and warmth grows plants, don't worship the messenger, worship the God who designed the whole thing and runs the whole thing. And if you want to worship the sun, that is the worst thing. That's one of the few things that a Jew has to die rather than tolerate. Avodah zarah is at the base of the worst level of sins for Am Yisrael. In fact, it says that the Shekhinah, God's presence, was in Gan Eden until Adam ate from the tree of Pri Eitz Hadas. The Shekhinah disappeared, and it came back down and was on earth again. We had a Dira B'Taktoinim for 5 minutes at Matan Torah when we got the Torah. What happened? They made the golden calf and went again. So there's no greater sin. So what about when you go to work and think that your effort is giving you the money? Now let's understand this. This is very deep and very important, because your effort is necessary. There's no question that your effort's not necessary. Otherwise you could stay in bed. So you are, in a sense, making the money. In a sense, your work is providing the livelihood. But it's only in a sense. It's only that you are making the vessel for Hashem, and then it's up to Hashem. And if you want to worship, let's take a stupid example. I run a mortgage fund, right? With my partners. And we recently redid our office, right? Because it was getting tired and old and things were broken and they weren't working. You okay, Alex? Have something to drink. So we brought new furniture in. Now, would anybody be stupid enough to think that our income comes from the furniture? Could you think that? Do we need the new furniture? We think we need the new furniture. But is the new furniture going to make us money and then the old furniture is not going to make us money? We have to try and provide a vessel for the brocha. And you have to do that in the best way you can physically. But to confuse that the brocha is coming to you through your effort, through your cunning. You know, I'll give you another example. Let's pretend that for some part of the davening, you can really concentrate. Even if you're doing it in English or whatever it is, you're praying to God. You're thanking Him for something good, or you're asking for something to improve, or you're asking for health instead of somebody's sickness, whatever it is that you're doing, your wife, your child. And in the middle of that davening, in the middle of that thinking, you suddenly realize that business deal that you have in the office, if you did it this way, that would solve the problem, right? Now, if you don't have the capacity to realize that this is madness, on the one hand, you're talking to the source of the brocha. You've built a relationship. You're talking to Him. You're talking to your God. You're having a spiritual moment, and you're prepared to trade that for some idea that you think that by your cleverness, it's going to be better than talking to God for the brocha. How can that be? Give you another example. These examples are legion. You have a person who owns a shop. It's one of the letters to the river. There was a guy in Los Angeles. He had a massive store and was doing very, very well. He met a Lubavitcher there, a shliach, and the shliach wouldn't leave him alone about working Shabbos and trying to convince him that everything's from Hashem and it's Hashem's brocha and he wrote into the Rebbe a famous letter, and he said to the Rebbe, what do you want me to say to this guy? He said, it's just a matter of simple mathematics. 6 days a week, we earn $1,000 a day. That's $6,000. And Shabbos, we earn $7,000. So we earn $13,000 a week, of which this was profit. These aren't the numbers. I'm just making the numbers up. And I can show you that if we close on Shabbos, 7,000's gone and 6 is the 1,000 that we've got. Now, does that sound logical? It sounds logical, right? But it can't be logical. Why? Because Hashem says not to work on Shabbos. So how can you profit by working on Shabbos? How can you? So the Rebbe answers him very gently and very sweetly and very nicely, and he says to him that you're telling me where the money, that you'll be gathering the money in. You're not explaining how long you'll keep it. You're not explaining whether or not it's going to be used for your wife smashing up the car, for doctor's bills, for
Education.
it's a bigger heshbon than you make. It's a much bigger calculation than you see, because you only see at the end of your nose. You see, but how can it be if you and then it becomes a very serious problem for you and me. At the end of the day, it's really a matter of betochen. It's really a matter of if you want to really test your relationship with your God, to the extent that you have absolute trust in your God, this is it. How can it be? How can you think, oh, it's a bit different because I know this and I know that and we earn more money and if so what happened to the guy in Los Angeles, by the way? He stopped working on Shabbos.
Didn't get a goy?
Huh?
Didn't get a goy to work?
There are problems with that, and no, he didn't. To be fair, he didn't, and he stopped working, and he wrote into the Rebbe, and he said, Rebbe, I'm reminding you of your calculations, and I'm showing you my balance sheet, right? He didn't get an answer to that. About a year later, a developer came and offered him 5 times the value of his building for it to be included in something. And he made much, much more from the sale of his building than he ever made in selling the schmutters. But the story only needs to have a happy ending if you're wavering in your personal trust. Because if your personal trust is strong enough, you'll understand that you don't need to hear the happy ending. Of course, it's if Hashem says not to work on Shabbos. So what does it mean, Shabbos Shabbosoin? It means that you'll really be able to also enjoy the Shabbos. It'll be a Shabbos for you. You won't be davening in shul and thinking of how you can fix something in the office on Monday morning, and if you do this, you bring in these things that will sell better, and if you can have a Shabbos. You can sit and talk to your wife and children. You can sit and no devices, nothing on the Shabbos table except each other. And if you've fallen out of love, learn to woo her again. If your children don't respect you because they haven't seen you for 15 years, meet them and learn who they are. And then you can have a Shabbos Shabboson. You can really have a Shabbos. So this issue of the work being done by your head, not being done by your head and your heart, but being done by your hands and your feet, of course, the physical activity has to be done. You need money, go out and type. But you don't be a typist. This is a very deep letter. And one's focus needs to be, of course I've got to work, and I've got to work to earn tzedakah, and I've got to work to discharge. There are a whole lot of mitzvahs that come from working. So you have to work, and you want to be successful in everything you do. So you want to be successful in working too. But what part of your soul are you prepared to spend on it? The Rebbe says, I'll tell you the answer to that. Your hands and your feet, not your head and your heart. Your head and your heart has to be reserved for me. Time with me. An existence with me. Now, so why is this speech the day after Yom Kippur? Because what the Rebbe is explaining is so deep in just these few words, is that they were forgiven for the Avodah Zarah. That's what Yom Kippur is. Yom Kippur is Day of Atonement, followed by forgiveness. But now that you've been forgiven Avodah Zarah, for goodness sake, don't recreate it. Understand that this is the way the best way for a Jew to live is as a Jew. And the best way for a Jew to live is in a relationship with his God that is personal, that is communal, and unbending. And everything else is secondary. And when everything else is secondary, then it is that Sheshis Yomim Teose Malaka. In the 6 days, your work will be done. Be done for you. Now, you should know that, and the physical part of this and the spiritual part of this is still a very big puzzle, because there are some people, we all know, there are some people, I must tell you, I've had some of the richest of my clients have been so stupid, they've been so stupid and so careless, and so it's just miraculous that they could put food on the table. Not only can they put food, they're billionaires. And then you get people, Rabbonim, people who can learn, people who've got unbelievable memories, who can quote you pages and pages of Talmud Baal Peh, who know Tanya Baal Peh off by heart, and they can't rub two coins together. And if they get it, I know somebody that won the lottery, a rabbi who won, it was a minor prize in the lottery. How long did he keep it? 3 months.
Depends how much.
It wasn't enough to retire, but it was a handsome prize. In those days, I'm scared to tell you because somebody might recognise it on the phone or on YouTube. And they can't keep it. Why? Because that's not their test. And for them to come to terms with that, or the rich man to come to terms with that, why? Notwithstanding he's so stupid, the money's coming to him. If he's stupid enough to think that it's his doing, these are personal journeys that everybody's got to do. But to understand the fundamental principle that the money is coming to you as a brocha, the work is only preparing the keli. And if you substitute the honor for the keli and not the brocha, then that is modern day avodah zarah. If you really believe in cash flows, that is modern day avodah zarah.
Without cash, we can't go to the bank and borrow.
All true, all true. And you have to do it. You have to prepare the cash flows and take it to the bank and show the bank manager and talk him into your cash flows. But if you believe in your heart that those cash flows are really predicting your brokers, you don't get it.
It's a great manager.
Huh?
It is the convenience, the great bank manager if you need it.
So l'chaim minacham, guys. All the best.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
Robert, another way of looking at the